HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Masters of Medicine, Our Greatest Triumphs in the Race to Cure Humanity's Deadliest Diseases, by Andrew Lamb, read by Jason Vu. Introduction. To wrest from nature. To wrest from nature the secrets which have perplexed philosophers of all ages, to track to their sources the causes of disease, to correlate the vast stores of knowledge, that they may be quickly available for the prevention and cure of disease. These are our ambitions. William Osler, M.D. By the end of the century, we will have found a cure for cancer. We will use stem cells to regrow nervous tissue and repair damaged spinal cords. Our knowledge of each individual's genetic makeup will allow us to diagnose and preemptively treat many diseases before they become manifest. The average lifespan will exceed 90 years, and reaching centenarian status will be commonplace. Most, if not all of us, believe that attainment of these ambitious goals is not only possible, but probable. We should be forgiven our hubris, for we have been conditioned to believe in mankind's almost limitless potential. Just think of what we have had the good fortune to witness in our lifetimes. An extraordinary exponential increase in scientific knowledge that dwarfed the modest achievements of prior centuries. Consider the life of just one person, my great-grandfather, who was born in 1893 and died in 1977. In his youth, horses remained a primary mode of transportation. The airplane had not been invented. No one in his family had ever used a telephone or seen an electric light bulb. But by the time he died, man had landed on the moon. Since then, our world has continued to evolve in innumerable ways, benefiting from such varied advances as the internet and the deciphering of the human genome. We have also beheld a quantum leap in medical knowledge and treatment that will be unfathomable to our ancestors. At the turn of the 20th century, hundreds of thousands died annually from infectious diseases like smallpox, tuberculosis, and cholera. The germ theory of disease was just beginning to gain widespread acceptance over prevailing 19th century theories that blamed bad air or miasmas. Legitimate medical doctors believed harmful treatments like radium water could cure a plethora of ailments including arthritis, impotence, and anemia. Others used mercury to treat syphilis. Quackery and snake oil salesmen abounded. The average life expectancy worldwide was only 33 years. 47 in developed countries. Then several changes occurred. Medical education became standardized. Improvements in sanitation, the introduction of vaccines and antibiotics, and advances in surgery and anesthesia had dramatic, beneficial effects. To a physician of the late 19th century, the idea that man might one day tame fatal infectious diseases, use a patient's own immune system to cure cancer, and operate on the human heart would be just as unbelievable as the idea of landing on the moon. If life expectancy can double, so that today average worldwide longevity has reached 73.4 years, 77.8 in the United States, is it so far-fetched to envision a future in which ordinary people will live to 100 or even 110? Historian and philosopher Yuval Noah Harari, author of the international best-selling books Sapiens and Homo Deus, goes even further, contemplating a day when mankind may even conquer death due to disease entirely, pointing to advances in genetic engineering, regenerative medicine, and nanotechnology. He notes that some futurists anticipate the achievement of a form of human immortality by 2100 or 2200, wherein diseases have been conquered and aging tissues will be regenerated, upgraded, or transplanted. This view of the future sees no limit to science's ability to prolong life and postpone death from physiological causes. In such a world, death might only occur due to war, accidents, and homicide. The future is always uncertain, but it's clear that we are living in the midst of a remarkable continuum of technological progress. It's a journey in which our recent past informs our view of a potentially limitless future. And yet, despite our penchant for optimism, a close study of history yields this crucial lesson. Progress is not inevitable, nor inexorable. In 1961, My father was a teenager who watched the first American, Alan Shepard, launched into space on a trip that lasted only 15 minutes and 28 seconds. 8 short years later, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were walking on the lunar surface. If you asked my father in 1969 what he thought the future held for space exploration, these astonishingly rapid scientific advances might have prompted him and many others to enthusiastically predict manned flights to Mars within a couple more decades, perhaps by the year 2000 at the latest. What we assume or expect to happen will not always come to pass. What seems assured or even everlasting is not. Nothing is certain. The Western Roman Empire encompassed 5 centuries of remarkable technological progress in Europe, yet receded from world history and was followed by the Dark Ages, a greater number of centuries marked by regression and ignorance. Perpetual medical progress is no more assured than any other aspect of human history. Our greatest medical accomplishments, the discoveries that saved millions of lives and alleviated untold suffering, were not preordained nor inevitable. Far from it. More often than not, these crucial advances depended on just one or a handful of individuals, fallible people who, through perseverance, skill, and sometimes dumb luck, took risks or made key observations that no one else had previously been willing or able to. Such physicians and scientists were often ridiculed and even ostracized by their peers, especially if their newfangled ideas threatened medical elites of their day. They dared to confront problems others assumed were unsolvable and sought answers to questions no one else in history had thought to ask. And yet, none of these innovators were martyrs or saints. Their brilliance was often marred by jealousy, pettiness, and astounding arrogance. Their remarkable stories illustrate that medical progress is not linear. It advances in fits and starts, and sometimes even moves backward. An examination of medical history reveals that the most crucial discoveries, ones that have proved more consequential than any atomic bomb or world war, hinged upon fleeting moments of breathtaking risk, mundane observation, or serendipitous error. This is a book about those moments. This is a book about those people, heroes, most of them unsung, whose discoveries were milestones in our perpetual quest to heal the sick, mitigate suffering, and delay death. It is impossible to understate the impact of these singular moments, for they relate to diseases that will afflict and kill us all. As such, this narrative of mankind's greatest modern medical achievements is organized by disease, the world's most common afflictions and most important killers. Heart disease, the world's #1 predator, rightly sits atop any list of most crucial disorders for lay people to understand. Diabetes, an epidemic instigated by the tragic irony that for the first time in human history, people are dying from eating too much instead of too little. Infectious disease, that tireless enemy against which we have celebrated many successes, but that continues to threaten global health like no other condition can. Cancer, our loathsome nemesis that has touched every family and strikes down young as well as old. Trauma, the ubiquitous infirmity that will surely persist even after all other diseases are someday defeated. And the affliction of childbirth, a top killer of mothers and children, until doctors uncover the secrets that would finally bring the practice of obstetrics kicking and screaming into a new age of improved health and better outcomes. This is not a comprehensive history of medicine. Instead, it is a tale of human audacity and courage that cannot fail to leave one with the astonishing impression that, save for one person, fortuitous observation, or sometimes mistake, life for all of us could be drastically different today. In the process, we will investigate the pathophysiology of diseases that have touched all our lives and the lives of our loved ones. An understanding of these conditions should not and cannot be reserved for the medical school graduate. Just as any parent would encourage a son or daughter to understand how a car runs or the basics of the internet, we should all know how our most common maladies affect us. To understand the human body and what can malfunction within it is not mere intellectual exercise. It is practical knowledge that will help us each recognize dangerous symptoms of disease, live healthier lives, and better understand our own conditions when we are the ones sitting across from the doctor. Each of us will one day be that person, and most likely, the news will not be pleasant. Yet, now more than ever, we are in position to wrest from nature its secrets and use this knowledge to combat disease in ways inconceivable to our predecessors. In this journey, we will also look to the future and, with luck, inspire the young to take up the mantle of discovery so that the next generation will succeed in achieving breakthroughs that transform our expectations of health and longevity. Most people born today will enjoy lifetimes that reach into the 22nd century. We hope that they will look back with astonishment at how much has been accomplished between now and then. We pray that the scourges that kill and perplex us today will become mere footnotes in tomorrow's books of history and science, and that our legacy of progress continues unabated. These are our ambitions. Chapter 1. Heart Disease. The Mavericks. As a young adult, Richard was a 3-pack-a-day smoker with a stressful job. One night during the summer of 1978, when he was just 37 years old, Richard awoke with a tingling sensation in 2 fingers of his left hand. He decided to go to the emergency room, where he passed out shortly after arriving. When he woke up, a doctor informed Richard that he'd had a heart attack. This was a shock. Richard had always considered himself athletic and very healthy. His physician prescribed bed rest, and Richard remained in the hospital for 11 days. After this alarming incident, Richard stopped smoking, exercised more, and lost weight. He underwent a relatively new procedure called cardiac catheterization, which permitted imaging of his coronary arteries. This showed a 50% narrowing of the right coronary artery, RCA, and a 75% blockage of the circumflex branch of the left anterior descending artery, LAD. No further treatment was recommended. Richard went on with his life, working in a career that he loved, but that seemed to grow increasingly stressful with each passing season. Even so, he thrived under the pressure, and his mentality reflected that of the young. He was invincible, too youthful to have a serious problem or disease that should limit his activities, career, or life. He began to view his heart attack as a one-off, a problem he'd solved through diet and exercise. Then, 6 years later, Richard felt a mild discomfort in his chest and throat. He went to the hospital for an evaluation. His electrocardiogram EKG was normal, but cardiac enzyme tests showed he'd had a second mild heart attack. 4 years after that, he awoke early one morning with chest pain. This was yet another heart attack. Catheterization revealed a clot in his RCA, and an echocardiogram showed he had lost 30% of his normal heart function. By now, Richard understood that he had a very serious disease that was likely to kill him one day, possibly much sooner than he'd ever imagined. He was only 47, with a wife and 2 wonderful daughters, and he couldn't imagine not being there to take care of them. Richard also didn't want to slow down his career, and he hated living in constant fear of another heart attack. So, when his cardiologist suggested he undergo quadruple coronary artery bypass surgery to improve his exercise tolerance and hopefully prolong his life, Richard agreed. Thankfully, the surgery went well, and Richard was discharged from the hospital 7 days after the operation. Shortly thereafter, Richard's medical condition began to draw a lot of attention from people outside of his immediate family, and even from the press. This was because President George H.W. Bush nominated him for a new job, United States Secretary of Defense. Richard Dick Cheney had previously served as Gerald Ford's chief of staff at the age of 34. His first heart attack had occurred during his first congressional race in Wyoming, which he won. At his Senate confirmation hearing for Secretary of Defense in 1989, his cardiologist, Dr. Alan Ross, testified that Cheney had no functional limitations whatsoever and a prognosis not substantially different from men of the same age group without such a previous cardiologic history. I see no medical reason for him not to perform well in the highest and most sensitive of public offices. But Dick Cheney's medical odyssey was only just beginning. and his was destined to be the story of a man who fortuitously benefited from almost every major cardiac advance of the last half-century. Advances that sometimes seemed to hit the scene just in time to save his damaged heart. After Cheney's bypass surgery, he successively served as Secretary of Defense, CEO of the Halliburton Company, and George W. Bush's vice presidential running mate. On November 22, 2000, in the midst of the post-election legal battle to determine the winner of the Bush-Gore election, Cheney again experienced nighttime chest pain, his fourth heart attack. Catheterization revealed a new, severe narrowing of a branch of the LAD called the diagonal coronary artery. This was causing significant ischemia, an inadequate supply of blood to the heart. To treat it, Cheney's cardiologist performed an angioplasty procedure using a catheter to place a stent and re-establish normal blood flow. 4 months later, Cheney had chest pain again. Though this was not determined to be a heart attack, he underwent another catheterization and a balloon angioplasty procedure to open up a narrowing that had formed in his stent. Upon further evaluation with a Holter monitor which continuously recorded his heartbeat over a couple of days, Cheney was found to have episodes of very fast heart rate, termed ventricular tachycardia. Ventricular tachycardia puts patients at risk for more severe arrhythmias, like ventricular fibrillation. So, to reduce this risk, Cheney had an implantable cardioverter defibrillator, ICD, inserted in his body. This electronic device is about the size of a small pager and resides under the skin of the upper chest. It continually monitors a patient's heartbeat and can overcome abnormal heart rhythms by acting as a pacemaker or by delivering an electric shock. On December 9, 2009, after Cheney's last term as vice president ended and he had returned to civilian life in Wyoming, he was backing his car out of his garage when he blacked out. His car crashed into a large boulder in his front yard. Secret Service agents rushed to the vehicle and pounded on the windows because the car doors had automatically locked. Cheney regained consciousness, unaware of what had happened but with a bruised forehead from where it had hit the steering wheel. At the hospital, data from his ICD revealed he had gone into spontaneous ventricular fibrillation with a heart rate of 222 beats per minute at 3:11 p.m. Upon detecting this irregularity, the ICD charged its capacitor and discharged 34.5 joules of energy to his heart to restore normal heart rhythm. The episode had lasted 16 seconds. The ICD saved Cheney's life. But by this point, Cheney's heart had suffered so much damage that he began to experience classic symptoms of end-stage heart failure. His heart's inability to pump enough blood through his body led to shortness of breath due to fluid buildup in his lungs. He experienced fatigue and leg swelling. He could not climb stairs or walk down the driveway to retrieve the morning newspaper. He felt so exhausted that he could barely get out of bed. Because he used blood thinners to prevent clot formation in his heart and legs, he was prone to severe nosebleeds. Sometimes these nosebleeds were so bad that he had to be hospitalized and receive blood transfusions. Meanwhile, his liver and kidneys began to fail from inadequate blood perfusion. Dick Cheney was dying. He had lived a remarkable life. He was proud of what he'd accomplished and felt at peace with the reality of dying. But he and his family were not yet ready to give up. To prolong his life and hopefully keep him alive long enough to receive a heart transplant, Cheney underwent surgery to implant a left ventricular assist device, LVAD. This remarkable piece of machinery is attached to the left ventricle at one end and the aorta at the other. Inside, a pump speeds at 9,000 revolutions per minute to propel blood from the heart to the aorta and the rest of the body, effectively replacing the function of the left ventricle. The pump is connected to a driveline that goes through the patient's chest wall and is attached to batteries that the patient wears in a vest. The LVAD delivers a smooth, continuous flow of blood to the body that is not dependent on the heart's pumping ability. Because of this, if one were to check an LVAD patient's wrist, no pulse would be felt. Now, the most important objects in Cheney's world became his batteries. His life was dependent on them, and he went everywhere with a bag or rolling suitcase full of extra batteries and spare components. Or he tried to. Once, while running errands in town, his batteries started beeping, indicating they had only 10 minutes of power remaining. To Cheney's dismay, he realized he had forgotten his spare batteries at home, some 20 minutes away. He immediately called his daughter Mary, who happened to be visiting his home, and told her to grab the batteries and meet him at a halfway point between them. They made it just in time. Dick Cheney did not receive any special consideration on the heart transplant wait list. He spent 20 months waiting for a new heart, almost double the average wait time, steadily moving up a list that is dependent not only on one's place in line, but also blood type, body size, and degree of medical need. The sickest patients moved to the top of the list. On March 23, 2012, Cheney got a nighttime call to tell him a heart was available. The surgery was successfully performed at Inova Fairfax Hospital in Virginia, giving Cheney a new chance and many more years of life with his family. His unique medical journey had progressed from his first heart attack in 1978, when his primary treatment had been bed rest, through the development of numerous medical advances that benefited him, including cardiac catheterization, angioplasty, coronary artery bypass surgery, and heart transplant. In the span of just over 30 years, treatment for heart attack victims had dramatically improved. These advances were propelled by the courageous work of medical mavericks, physicians and surgeons who aspired to solve the mystery of the world's #1 killer, heart disease. A silent, mysterious adversary. At the beginning of the last century, it was not uncommon for middle-aged people to just drop dead. They would look fine 1 second, then suddenly collapse and expire within a few minutes. Physicians had no grasp of what was happening inside these unlucky individuals. Astute practitioners correctly surmised the problem somehow lay with the failure of the heart, especially since victims often suffered crushing chest pain and grew short of breath in the agony of their final moments. But doctors were at a loss to explain the pathophysiology of the condition. For millennia, the workings of the heart itself had likewise been shrouded in mystery. The organ was inaccessible, hidden within the center of the chest, guarded by a wall of ribs, and impossible to examine in life. Truthfully, uncovering the heart's mysteries was not a pressing concern to practitioners of centuries past. Infectious diseases were far more deadly, and most people simply did not live long enough to develop heart disease. In the United States, average life expectancy in 1900 was only 47 years. By 1930, however, average American longevity had increased to 60 years, and heart disease became the leading cause of death. Today, heart disease is responsible for about 25% of all deaths in the U.S., approximately 659,000 per year, greater than mortality due to all types of cancer combined. The heart is an incredibly effective pump that pushes 6,000 liters of blood through the body every day. In doing so, it fulfills the essential job of delivering oxygen and nutrients to all the body's tissues. Under normal conditions, deoxygenated blood returning through the venous system to the four-chambered heart enters the right atrium and passes through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. From there, blood temporarily exits the heart via the pulmonary artery, which bifurcates, sending a branch into each lung. These branches arborize into intricate webs of increasingly smaller vessels, progressing from arteries to arterioles to capillaries so small that individual red blood cells must pass through them single file. These capillary walls surround and fuse with the lungs' alveoli, equally tiny grape-like clusters at the termini of the bronchial tree. In millions of alveoli during every breath of life, inhaled air undergoes gas exchange. Oxygen binds to the hemoglobin protein residing inside each red blood cell, which simultaneously unloads carbon dioxide that is then exhaled. Like the myriad tributaries of a mighty river, tiny capillaries grow in diameter, join with other vessels, and ultimately spill into the sizable pulmonary veins that return newly oxygenated blood to the left atrium of the heart. From the left atrium, blood passes through the mitral valve into the left ventricle, a larger cavity with muscular walls well suited to propel blood up into the aorta and out to the farthest reaches of the body and its extremities. It may be more accurate to call this remarkable pump an extremely reliable muscle, one run by an enduring battery capable of lasting an entire lifetime. This battery is the sinoatrial node, a small nexus of specialized cells in the wall of the right atrium that spontaneously generates electrical pulses to act as the heart's pacemaker. Cardiac cells that respond to the demands of the sinoatrial node are capable of normal function at 60 to 100 contractions per minute, and much more as the need arises. Their key distinguishing feature is a remarkable abundance of mitochondria, known to every high school student as the powerhouse of the cell. This high concentration of mitochondria and unrivaled capacity for contractile energy comes at a price: an extreme dependence on aerobic or oxygen-dependent metabolism. What feeds this life-giving muscle pump with a voracious appetite for oxygen? The coronary arteries, 3 5 to 10 centimeters long, 4 millimeter wide vessels that are, without a doubt, humankind's most valuable. The three main coronary arteries are the left anterior descending artery, also known as the LAD or widowmaker, the right coronary artery, and the left circumflex artery. These arteries stem from the aorta, run along the surface of the heart, and send tiny nourishing branches into the heart wall. The maverick. In 1912, a Chicago internist named James Herrick presented a new paper with a novel idea at the annual meeting of the Association of American Physicians. He postulated that sudden cardiac death occurred when a thrombus, or clot, blocked a coronary artery and prevented oxygen-rich blood from reaching cardiac muscle, resulting in tissue death. To Herrick's chagrin, his presentation elicited little reaction from the audience. "It fell like a dud," he later wrote. No one recognized it as the groundbreaking and correct theory that it was. It was not until 1918 when Herrick reintroduced his idea with results from experiments performed on the coronary arteries of dogs that his peers began to take notice. The perplexing condition that could fell young men and women in the prime of their lives was termed a myocardial infarction. For the first time, doctors began to understand the importance of the coronary arteries and their complicity in ischemic heart disease. But by what means could these tiny, constantly moving vessels be studied and understood? In 1929, a 24-year-old German medical intern named Werner Forssmann theorized that a catheter could be threaded up into the heart through a vein in the arm. If successful, he thought this might be an effective way of injecting drugs directly into the right atrium. When he proposed this radical idea to the chief of his department, Dr. Richard Schneider, Schneider immediately replied, "I cannot possibly let you carry out such an experiment on a patient." To intentionally introduce a foreign object like the catheter into the heart was mad. Conventional wisdom held that doing so would precipitate an arrhythmia, or air embolism, that could kill the patient. Undeterred, the impetus Forssmann then suggested, "Well, in that case, there's another way to prove it's not dangerous. I'll experiment on myself." Shocked, Schneider insisted, "My no is final and absolute." The mere suggestion of such a dangerous and irresponsible idea convinced him that the impulsive young man standing before him lacked good sense. Forssmann pretended to accept his boss's judgment, but in secret, he hatched a plot. "I decided to override Schneider's prohibition and go ahead with the experiment on my own heart, secretly and quickly," Forssmann admitted in his 1972 autobiography. He first needed to obtain a catheter and the sterile instruments he'd used to perform the procedure, but they were kept in a locked storage area. The custodian of the keys was a nurse named Gerda Ditzen. How to gain her cooperation? Forssmann, the handsome, rakish doctor in training, decided his best option was to beguile the young woman. "I let a few days go by and then started to prowl around Nurse Gerda Ditzen like a sweet-toothed cat around the cream jug," wrote Forssmann. "It was easy to find something to gossip about, and she'd invite me back to her little office. So, little by little, I won over my essential disciple." Within a couple weeks, Ditzen had grown so enamored with Forssmann that he decided the time was right to put his plan into action. The following afternoon, the good lady was sitting in her cubicle when I breezed in, whistling cheerfully, Forssmann recalled. "Nurse Gerda," he said, "I want you to give me a set of instruments for a venesection under local anesthesia and a ureteral catheter." The nurse was suspicious. "But no one in the ward's scheduled for a venesection. You're not planning to do that experiment of yours against boss's orders, are you?" she asked. Forceman had been found out even before he'd begun, but instead of giving up, he doubled down. Nurse Gerda, you need know nothing about what I'm going to do. But supposing I were to do the experiment.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?